This is your Tuesday daily delivery. I am Michael Rand. Good to have you guys back again today. Good show coming up. Andrew Krammer, a little film review on the Vikings, and it's positive for a change. Looking at key sequence in the third quarter of that 27-20 win over the Chargers, where the defense made a couple big plays and the offense took advantage of them. Two things that maybe haven't happened nearly enough this season, but happened in a big way to get the Vikings a big win on Sunday. Keith Rashad will join me for My Least Favorite Team is My Favorite Team, this time in haiku form. He surprised me with a recap of the game in 4 different haikus, the Vikings game, of course. And again, some positives to take out of that game as the Vikings improved to 4-5. Not so happy news. Randy Johnson joins me on the podcast. Happy news that he's on. Love having Randy on. Not so happy results-wise for the Gophers against Iowa this weekend. They lost, of course, 27-22, and really their opportunity for a better than just okay season really took a hit in that game. We'll see what they're able to do the rest of this season. So let's get it going. Lots of good football talk today on Daily Delivery. It's film review time with Andrew Krammer, covers the Vikings for the Star Tribune. Andrew, plenty to like for, I'd say a change, but you know, when the Vikings have lost more than they've won this year, and there's certainly been their share of negatives, this was a game where you found a lot to like. They beat the Chargers 27-20. And I think we want to focus on kind of a key sequence in the game in the third quarter that illustrated both kind of the offense and the defense and how they kind of turned that game around. So maybe with that as a bit of a setup, kind of walk me through what you saw as they basically turned a 17-13 deficit into a 27-17 lead pretty quick.
Yeah, that second half, it turned on a dime, because if you remember how it started out, the Chargers marched down the field. It was this kind of here we go again. Vikings are coming out slow in the second half. They're going to blow this 13-10 lead in the first half that really felt like it should have been much bigger, if not for all the penalties. I think 8 of their penalties were in the first half alone. And so you just get this feeling of like, yep, here we go again, 3-6 on the way for this season. Chargers score, go up 17-13. Vikings get the ball back, go 3 and out, do, basically what we've seen them do many, many times. But then it changed on the next drive. And to me, it was really about Mike Zimmer and this defensive coaching staff that really put their defenders in place to just be untouched and kind of blitz and get pressure on Herbert in ways that you could tell the Chargers were not expecting. And that's just a kind of tell that they were just out-coached and out-schemed, especially when you got Cam Bynum coming through on a third down on that next series in the third quarter where the Chargers are facing 3rd and 4. Cam Bynum's playing way off. He's way in the back. Herbert is kind of pointing to the running back and telling him, hey, look at Kendricks and Vigil over here. They're over center. They're doing the A-gap thing that Mike Zimmer likes to do on third down. Well, here Zimmer throws a left hook and has Bynum coming dropping down right at the snap to blitz, gets untouched, gets that sack on third down, forces the Chargers punt, gives the Vikings the ball back. The Vikings end up marching down then to score that touchdown at Conklin at 4th and goal at the 1 eventually to take that 20-17 lead. And that was just a huge pivot in that game. And then they come out in the next drive too. The Chargers do after that Vikings touchdown, and they face a 2nd and 7 immediately. And Mike Zimmer blitzes again. Nick Vigil, untouched, comes through. A perfect design. I mean, the Vikings and Zimmer had the Chargers protection plans just off balance the entire time. When the Chargers thought, we got to move it this way, the Vikings were coming the other way. And that was certainly the case with Vigil there coming through untouched. And then on the 3rd and 7, right after that, Zimmer blitzes again. And Sheldon Richardson is the one who gets the hit. And so 3 straight pass plays there for the Chargers, 3 straight hits on Justin Herbert. And Justin Herbert is looking at a 17-13 lead, just totally diminished to a 27, 17 lead, or deficit it should be for Herbert by the time he got the ball back in the 4th quarter. So with all that said, it was a huge swing in the game, and it was really just a good showing, I think, from a veteran coaching staff and players who clearly were still bought in. I mean, after 98 plays and another tough road loss in Baltimore, and this is a really impressive defensive performance.
Yeah, I thought so. And it was one of those games where the offense and defense finally seemed to complement each other a little bit, where, when the defense does get them the ball back there in the third quarter, they are able to go down and take the lead. They stay aggressive. I think if Cousins held the ball for a tenth of a second longer, that pass to Conklin's probably incomplete because he barely got it there as it was, hit as he threw, but it did get there. It did, he did have enough time to barely get it there. And then you're right, the next drive, they go down and get another score there. And then they have the confidence, I guess, in both the offense and the defense to run a play on 4th and 2 at the end and say, we can close the game out right here if we can get 2 yards. And if we don't, we're going to put it in the defense's hands to keep them out of the end zone. So it felt like those two units have kind of been not at odds, but they haven't supported each other always this year. And that was a difference this year to me.
Yeah, and Sunday was a huge difference in just the aggression that the Vikings were showing. You just mentioned it there with going for it on 4th down, going for it 4th and 1 at the goal line, 4th and 2 at the end of the game. Mike Zimmer said after the game, we talked to him at SoFi Stadium in LA, and he had mentioned we just wanted to win. He was asked about, like, when you got the ball back with 4 minutes left, what were you thinking in terms of your approach? The 4-minute offense, which typically is an offense that's trying to pick things up a little bit. Like, let's speed it up, let's get down the field and score. And Mike Zimmer was saying, no, I wanted to bleed the clock. I wanted to end the game with the ball in our hands. And if we score, we score. But if not, hopefully we can just hold on and not do this thing where we try to take some shots and end up punting and go 3 and out. And so that kind of approach, I think, was a big mentality pivot. Justin Jefferson called it a big adjustment in practice to focus on getting the ball to our playmakers, which seems like in week 10 an indictment on where this offensive coaching staff was at and where they kind of fell into in the middle of this season, because it wasn't an issue to start the year. They did so well, in my opinion, in Cincinnati until that Cook fumble and after all the fall starts. And then obviously in Arizona, they did very well too. And it just had fallen apart and they kind of gotten into a rut. And I think this game is, if they can use it as a springboard to kind of get them back into rhythm of, hey, get Justin Jefferson the ball. It's okay if you end up throwing an interception. We could live with that.
Pardon me, Andrew, but how do you lose sight of that? It seems like that should be kind of an obvious thing to get the ball to your best players.
Right. That's what I said. It's an indictment. It's an indictment on a 34-year-old offensive coordinator who clearly was getting lost in some of the things that he was trying to do. And this is really just simplifying it. They may need to complicate some of the ways that they get them the ball in terms of getting them open, but it's just simplifying it. We don't need to scheme a trick play to CJ Ham or something like that, or Tyler Conklin. And another part of it too is Kirk married that aggressiveness. Like he met that aggressiveness. The level that Zimmer wanted, he met it. And I think that's a big part of this, is that Mike Zimmer's often coached this team of don't turn the ball over, control the clock, all the things we've talked about. And that can be a hindrance on a quarterback who wants to check it down when that read to Justin doesn't really look open down there. Maybe he get it, maybe not. And on Sunday, he said, you know what, I'm just going to throw it. And it worked out. And I think they can, maybe keep doing that. I think it's something they might have learned about themselves.
Yeah, that's a good point. Felt like I said, complimentary football. Jefferson had 9 catches, 11 targets. I mean, way over his output from the previous 2 games combined. And one of those games featured a long touchdown grab for him. So aside from that long touchdown he caught to start the loss against the Ravens, he hadn't done much at all the last 2 weeks.
No, he hadn't. And that's part of the issue. Adam Thielen either. He had the 2 catches last week in Baltimore, and then combined they had the 5 grabs. And you just can't have that. You can't have that when you have one of the more prolific duos of wide receivers in the NFL. And Kirk, it can play like this. It's just a matter of keeping him comfortable and doing it, scheming easy throws early in the games to get him into a rhythm and keeping him into that rhythm. And I think a big part of it was this offensive line did a pretty decent job against the Chargers pass rush with Joey Bosa and some of the blitz schemes that they come up with in LA, because they do get to be a little blitz happy. That worked really well with the offensive line, picking it up. And that wasn't the case in Baltimore. And so I think that's also a big difference from Sunday. So you saw more of that good offensive line as opposed to the bad offensive line that we have seen throughout stretches of this season.
So last thing, how did Zimmer, do you think, kind of confuse protections and kind of get those guys to be free runners essentially in those situations?
Yeah, it goes to show that these guys are well prepared going into the game, because you've got a rookie safety in Cam Bynum who was a corner at Cal not that long ago. He is making a transition to a different position that requires a lot of communication and a lot of study to know what he needs to do. And you can get him to sell a blitz like he did, where he, in that 3rd and 7 or 3rd and 4, it would have been, he's standing back there in 2 deep and he's waiting. And you can see him wait until Herbert signals to a running back where to go in terms of where to angle the pass protection block. And then that's kind of when he starts showing, like, I'm going to start creeping up to the line. And so he's timing that. And for a rookie, that's pretty, I guess, advanced, I would say, because you just don't see that too often from young players. And so I think that's good timing. It's good coaching. And really, Zimmer's just always been, Brandon Staley, the Chargers head coach, said going into that game, he called Mike Zimmer one of the greatest third down architects in the history of football. And so when it's a known pass, there are fewer coaches who are better than Mike Zimmer. And it's funny that Mike Zimmer went ahead and proved him right on Sunday.
Good stuff, Andrew. Next week carries a great amount of weight. We'll see if the Vikings can even their record at 500 at home against the Packers. Certainly won't be easy. A team that looked awfully good on defense on Sunday, even if the offense took a little while to get going against Seattle. So that one will be fun to see as well. Andrew, we'll talk to you next week. All right.
Yeah. Thanks, Mike.
Interesting. You heard Andrew talking a little bit about Cameron Bynum, who made another big play in this game. Second straight game. He's had a splash play, had that sack in the 3rd quarter that got the Vikings off the field. Subbing for Harrison Smith, Cameron Bynum's had 2 very good games. Pro Football Focus for weeks 9 and 10, the 2 weeks that Cameron Bynum played in place of Harrison Smith, has him graded as the 3rd best safety in the NFL for those 2 weeks. So we'll see if he's able to stay on the field. That 4th round draft pick rookie getting in and getting some good action for the Vikings so far.
Take a playcation to Mystic Lake. With 24/7 gaming, the good times never have to end. And you can satisfy your cravings at our restaurants and bars. Or relax in one of our luxurious hotel rooms. Those that play together, stay together. And don't forget to join Club M so you can spark new memories and bask in the rewards along the way. Follow the lights to Mystic Lake, where every day is play day.
My least favorite team is my favorite team. It's that time again. Keith Rashat joins me as usual. For once, the Vikings are your favorite team. Probably the second time all year that you've probably walked away from a Vikings game completely satisfied. Even in 2 of their other wins, I think there was more a sense of relief and maybe even anger, even when they beat Carolina and Detroit. But I think that one's up there with the Seattle game as perhaps their most complete games of the year. And Keith, I can only conclude based on the way they played that game that Mike Zimmer is an avid listener of this segment, because we've been begging all year for him to trust the offense. And in that game, it felt like they trusted the offense for a change. They got the 4th quarter drives. They went for it on 4th down at the very end, got the yards they needed to not have to give the ball over to San Diego, the Chargers. I'm not saying San Diego, by the way. I'm never going to get over the fact that they're not the San Diego Chargers anymore. Chargers don't get the ball back, don't have to lean on the defense. They can just run out the clock. So I'm sure Mike Zimmer must be listening to this every week. That's my only conclusion.
How long have we known each other?
So we established in the first segment that it was 7th grade, and I talked about the Timberwolves going to the Eastern Conference. So it's I'm 45 now. So 33 years, I'm going to say.
Okay, close to 35 years, right?
Yes.
All of which means that, particularly with my current station in life, you could claim to know me better than anybody else knows me. You've known me for these 35 years, right? And I don't know how you describe me to other people, but if I had to,
I try not to.
I understand totally. But if I were to imagine how you describe me to other people, I would imagine that the first words that come out of your mouth is, he has the soul of a poet, right? Those are definitely the first words that come out of your mouth. And so I've had a tough time lately trying to figure out how to express myself on this segment and about the Vikings.
Okay.
Consequently, I have turned to poetry. I think that is the only way. And this is
a surprise.
It speaks to exactly what you were talking about, right? Because I want to debut what I think should be a new segment on our segment, which is Vikings poetry.
Please tell me it's a haiku.
I have 4 haikus for you.
It's not just a haiku, it's 4. I knew it would be a haiku because that's your preferred form of artistic poetic expression, but go on.
And for those listeners that don't know, a haiku is a 3-line poem. The first and third lines have 5 syllables and the second line has 7 syllables. And it's intended to capture a moment or idea or just this spark of inspiration or awareness within the world.
Yes.
And so my first haiku very much speaks to exactly what you're saying, and we can talk more about it then, right? So, all right, haiku number 1. Justin Jefferson. Zimmer finally discovered he's on the roster.
Ooh, tough but fair. I gave it an 8 out of 10.
I think,
I'm gonna grade. I'm gonna give immediate snap grades to your haiku, just like we were doing the draft or something like that.
I think that makes perfect sense, but It speaks exactly to what you were talking about.
Right.
That finally, it seems like there was enough faith, enough trust in the offense to let the best players on the team do what it is that they do best, right? And that's the best side of the ball. And they finally did what needed to be done. So I think your ultimate conclusion that Zimmer is listening to the podcast makes perfect sense.
100%. Okay, I want to hear haiku too.
Okay, haiku number 2. All right. Chargers uniforms. I support them in theory, but they look dirty.
Dirty? How? In what way?
I don't know. There's something about that shade of yellow with
like
that
sexual?
shade of blue. No, not at all.
Like dirty,
no.
like they have dirt on them.
As if they're dusty,
Okay.
right? They look somehow like they're perpetually dusty. And I appreciate a different uniform. I appreciate a uniform that's just not red and white and blue and some black in there somehow. And so in theory, I really enjoy those uniforms, but every time I see them on TV, it just looks like the whole team is coated in some layer of dust.
Maybe it's the outdated offensive philosophies they're running that you're seeing.
It could be the dusty philosophies that
I give that one a 7.3. I might have to go back and regrade that one after 2 years, though, to see how it really panned out, just like the draft.
Exactly. All right, let me give you number 3 here.
Yep.
All right. Low, Aaron Kendricks. Your game is so much tighter than is your helmet.
Okay, I like it. Did you say Aaron Hendricks or Eric Hendricks?
Whatever I said. You know who I'm talking about.
I do. Okay, so I'm grading on a curve.
This is poetry from the soul.
It's
man.
from the soul.
Don't
okay.
get wrapped up in the details here.
Okay, I don't want to get the emailer after you, making sure you're sticking to the facts.
That's right.
In substance, I give that one like an 8.7, but I'm going to knock off half a point because I wasn't sure if you had the right first name, so I'm going to go 8.2.
But he was amazing.
He was great. That interception was awesome. He had a sack. I mean, it was a reminder of just what an impact player he is.
And I will say I was incredibly surprised. I did not expect. What did they have? 14 players missing on defense this week?
It seemed like it. And they're playing a lot of different guys, playing a lot of young guys. I'm not surprised they played hard again. It felt like they had one more. If they would have lost this one, I would have wondered what the energy and intensity might have been for that Packers game. But it did feel like they had one more big effort in them. And now that they won this one, I feel like they've got another one in them for next week against Green Bay. But I am surprised at how well they played. Absolutely.
And they managed to get pressure. And the thing that I noticed, I don't know if you noticed this as well too, but they seemed to actually blitz on occasion. They didn't just rely on the front four to create the pressure that they need to have success because the rest of the team can't hold up without it. And so they finally seemed to do some things like throwing some extra bodies in there to try to create a little bit extra chaos, to have the sacks, and thus Aaron Hendricks, or whoever his name is. I can't remember.
Eric Kendricks. Eric Kendricks.
Man, Brent is really going to be all over me.
Did you mess up the first and the last name?
Soul of a poet, man.
Did you call him Aaron Hendricks? You did. You did, didn't you? That's okay.
So
I know who you meant. There's nobody else on the team close to that.
Speaking of Jimi Hendrix.
Speaking of Stevie Nicks.
Exactly, right. The fact that he was one of the ones that had that big sack, right, speaks to the Zimmer's necessity of having to do something different and be a little bit more creative and throwing some different folks to create the pressure again that they need to have any sort of success. And so that it was nice to see at least 1 week's worth of change and transition and willingness to do something different, and actually relying on the offense a little bit as well too.
Yeah, and one thing I mentioned too, I think along that line, I think another sack of theirs was by Cam Bynum, the safety that was replacing Harrison Smith, who was out with COVID for that second straight week. Bynum was actually on the podcast a few months ago, right after he got drafted. Really nice guy, good guy, and it was kind of fun to watch him play after kind of getting to know him a little bit better on the podcast. And he's had 2 pretty good games, maybe something to watch for going forward as they kind of think about his role. I mean, he's not going to replace Harrison Smith, obviously, but on a permanent basis. But is there a bigger role for him going forward too?
Do you attribute his success to being on your podcast?
I'm just happy that somebody who came on this podcast didn't immediately get cursed.
Well, that's true. Most of them got something like severe leg injuries or were out for 6 to 8 months.
COVID or whatever it is. It's been it's. I mean, I don't want to scare people off from coming on this show, but there's been a few instances where things haven't gone perfectly right after coming on this show. So that's all. What's the fourth haiku?
What does that mean for me? I wonder.
You've been on the show. You've picked up immunity. No, you've got immunity, qualified immunity.
Diplomatic immunity.
Yeah.
All right.
You can't go to Poland though.
Well, that's so true. And not that I would want to, but whatever.
Yeah.
Fourth and final haiku. The LA Chargers were primed to lose to the Vikes. But what about Green Bay? And so the whole sort of premise behind that one is just simply, it seemed like everything that the Chargers do well and then don't do well as a philosophy played right into the Vikings' hands, right? That they're not really great. They're not really all that concerned, apparently, with stopping the run. And the Vikings were able to do that, right? That Vikings were able to create enough pressure that there seemed to be an undercurrent that even though the Chargers were favored in the game, a lot of people seemed to be picking the Vikings to win. And so it was one of those moments where there was opportunity to shine. And like you said earlier, maybe this is that one last gasp for the team in terms of being willing to still fight for Zimmer and what have you. And so we'll see what happens with the future, right? That haiku is more about a question, a sense of what the future holds. So is there any room or possibility for success for them next week?
I think there is, although, Green Bay's defense looks a lot better than I imagined it would. I mean, they shut out Seattle. Russell Wilson probably pretty rusty coming back from his injury, but they're looking like a team that's pretty formidable. But it's at US Bank Stadium. We certainly know, if you want to buy into the cliches of who needs it more, who wants it more, certainly that falls into the Vikings territory. But Zimmer teams have done a pretty good job over the years against Aaron Rodgers, even in prime Rodgers and some of his better years, they've done a pretty good job containing him. So
what about Rodgers absolutely sick with COVID?
Even better. No, I'm glad he recovered and is back, but I think I give them a chance in that game at the very least. If they play like they did on Sunday and they play a complete game and stay aggressive, I think they certainly have a chance. I think Green Bay is a good team, but they've won a lot of close games this year. I don't think this is one of those where you just say, they've got no chance.
But is this the setup for them, the huge letdown?
If 44 or not, that's not how many years I've viewed them, but if our lifetimes are any indication, yes. But we'll see. By the way, can you? I think I know my grade for that, but can you read your last line of that last haiku for me?
I accidentally threw in an extra word.
You did.
It was just the last line is supposed to be, "What about Green Bay?"
Okay, because I was docking you points. I had you for 6 syllables. Thank you for correcting that. I like that you end on a question, that you kind of leave the listener wanting more. Maybe your best one. Yeah, I'll give it an 8.6. I don't know what Aaron Hendricks thinks of it, but Eric Kendricks liked it.
I don't know what Jimi Hendrix thinks about it either.
No, but well, I think that was a nice, tidy way to talk about the show. We'll see if you have 4 more haikus next week. We'll see. I think you can do it.
I think I probably could, but I have no social media accounts. Let me encourage the listeners to send all their haikus to you, though.
Thank you.
And other poetry.
Yes.
Have to admit, I kind of like the haikus. We'll see if they stick around. And by the way, 5 syllables, 7 syllables, 5 syllables, that adds up to 17. That's the number of games in the NFL. Coincidence? I think not.
Joined now by Randy Johnson, covers the Gopher football team for the Star Tribune, was in Iowa City on Saturday to witness a game that you accurately described, Randy, as one in which the Gophers probably played about how they wanted to play, had the ball for over 40 minutes, had a yard advantage, had won the turnover battle, and yet still couldn't find a way to beat Iowa. They lose 27-22 and all but dashing their hopes of a Big Ten West championship, barring some sort of weird happenstance in the last couple weeks. What give me your big picture takeaways from that game and and the inability to kind of get over the hump in some of these rivalry games.
Yeah, that's the thing. They probably played as well as they have against Iowa under Coach PJ Fleck. Basically, they were right there. Couldn't quite. 3 times they're inside Iowa's 15 and have to settle for field goals. That was pretty tough there. That's where they left a lot of points on the board that they could have had. They had a couple 3rd down situations in the second half that they didn't get the first down and put them in a tough position. One was pretty pivotal. They had a 3rd and 7. Chris Ottman-Bell, it would have been a tough catch to come down with and thrown a little bit high. He gets that one. They keep the drive going instead. Next play after the punt, Iowa gets the 72-yard touchdown when Justin Wally, Gophers cornerback, gets beat on an out and up by Charlie Johnson, and that put Iowa ahead for good. So they're basically up. Gophers up 13-10 at halftime. It was looking decent chance to win. You win the second half, you got a shot at winning the game. But yeah, they just a couple. Iowa ended up having a couple explosive plays in the second half that pretty much swung the deal.
You could imagine going into that game that you was probably going to be the sentiment was that it would be fairly low scoring. I mean, 27-22 isn't super low scoring, but points were going to be at a premium. So I get in that regard the hey, let's get 3 when we can. That said, those are momentum plays, and like you said, those are also plays where you get to the end of the game, and when you're not putting up 7s, you're getting 3s. You might look back on it and say, did we do everything we could in those situations? But I didn't get the sense that PJ Fleck was second guessing himself as much as some of us might have been second guessing that.
No, he wasn't. His argument was, we needed to get whatever points we could get there. He was playing it safe. Yeah, he wanted to get at least 3 all those times. You wonder about the first one, 4th and goal from the 2. Maybe they go for it there. It's early enough in the game that maybe it doesn't hurt you immensely if you get it going well. That's one area where I kind of wondered if that would have been one to go for.
Absolutely. Well, it leaves them, in a spot where, they play Indiana next week. Indiana just got hammered by Rutgers, right? And so Indiana's
38-3, I believe it was.
Indiana for whatever
at home even.
Yeah, for whatever we thought of Indiana at the beginning of the year, that has not played out. So you would think that should be an opportunity to get the 7th win, the 5th win in the Big Ten. But then they've got Wisconsin to finish the year, and Wisconsin probably in that game has a good chance to. We danced on their grave probably a little bit too soon. They're back, and they've got a chance to win to still win the West pretty well.
Yeah, they those 3 losses earlier in the season, and one of them was out of conference, so it didn't. They didn't win Notre Dame. It didn't hurt them at all in the Big Ten. It's just they weren't looking real good. Now they've got their offense going a bit now, so and their defense is very good.
So I got the sentiment was for a while, and you and I have talked about this. Chip Scoggins and I have talked about this, that if the West was wide open, and I think that played out this year. And the Gophers had all this experience at some key spots, and obviously, injuries at running back contributed to this season. Not having Ottman Bell for all of the games certainly hurt the offense too. But by and large, they've had decent health at other spots. Where they sit right now, is this about where they deserve to be, or do we think of this as still season left to play, but a missed opportunity, I guess, a real missed opportunity to do something more with this year?
Yeah, I think so. The Iowa game is obviously one of those. That was a winnable game. They didn't quite do it. That's you're looking for something to hang their hat on right now. What's their signature win? Purdue. That was a nice win and everything. Shut out the Boilers in the second half, but that's not going to be one you're going to remember long term. They still have a chance here. They have Wisconsin. If they can salvage that one, then the season doesn't look as disappointing. But right now at 6-4, I think pretty much any fan would have thought they would be better than this, or better record than this right now.
So what has to happen? I mean, if they haven't beaten Iowa under PJ Fleck, they beat Wisconsin that one time so far. A few years ago, was that 2018? I believe that they beat Wisconsin.
Yeah, 2018. Yep. Mm-hmm. That one was. I mean, that's been one of his bigger wins here. I mean, they pretty much dominated that game.
Is it just a matter of they're not on the level of those programs yet, or do we? Is it coming up short in big games? Is it all sorts of factors you think in those moments? Because that piece of it, or as much as PJ Fleck's done here, and the 11-2 season 2 years ago, with the two losses, of course, being to Iowa and Wisconsin, that piece of it has to be frustrating.
I'm sure it is for the coaching staff and the players. Yeah, they've done a lot of good things. It's just those rivalry games have been they haven't been able to get over the hump often enough. And 0-5 against Iowa, 1-4, or 1-3 so far against Wisconsin. It's that's to pass those teams, you have to beat those teams.
Now, like we said, Indiana not in a good place right now. An opportunity to get well to a certain degree. I mean, if they play like they did this past week, Indiana probably shouldn't be a problem. But is the way they played this past week good enough to beat Wisconsin, or would they have to do more still? Show they can throw a little bit more. I know they got the deep one late that pulled them close, but some missed opportunities in the past game against Iowa that kind of make me think they still can't do it when they need to.
Yeah, that's a situation where they don't want to get in the game in the 20s, I would say, because they don't want Wisconsin to get to the 20s, because Wisconsin isn't giving up much right now. Their defense probably a little bit better than Iowa's, and so Iowa's was pretty good. The Gophers got to 22. I think that's a game where you need your defense to really hold Wisconsin down. It's not the best Wisconsin offense we've seen over the years, but they're getting good run play right now, and quarterback Mertz has been more efficient of late. So they're kind of hitting their stride. Yeah. The Gophers, their margin for error isn't much. I mean, they'd love to just be able to run the ball, but I'm not sure they'll be able to do that against Wisconsin.
Well, we'll see. Randy, good stuff. Good coverage from Iowa. Go read that. Star Tribune, StarTribune.com. Read everything that we've got leading up to Indiana and Wisconsin, and we'll catch you again next week, all right?
Sounds good, Mike. Thanks.
Just a postscript to Randy and I having our discussion. Tanner Morgan will remain the Gophers starting quarterback. Randy reporting and PJ Fleck saying on Monday, so don't look for necessarily a change in leadership there from the senior quarterback. And with just 2 regular season games left, I imagine that is his job for the rest of his career. But we will see. He's been, up and down, probably more down than the Gophers would like, completing only 57.7% of his passes, 7 touchdowns, 7 interceptions this year. Had some nice plays against Iowa, also missed some throws. So, whatever the alternative would be, I'm curious to see, quite honestly, but I don't think we're going to see that this year. Let's finish quick with the cooler. Pete Carroll, Seahawks coach, was every Vikings fan everywhere complaining about officiating in their loss to the Packers the other day. He was on a radio show complaining about this, that, the other thing. I kind of loved it. It was refreshing to see someone else complain about all the calls that have gone against them in terms of the Packers getting the benefit of the doubt. That'll do it for today. Good stuff coming up the rest of the week. I think Sarah McClellan will be on later this week to talk wild hockey. I think Adrian Heath might be on, United coach, to advance the playoff game that Minnesota United has coming up on Sunday, and plenty of other good stuff as well. Thanks for joining me here today on Daily Delivery. I'm Michael Rand. We'll catch you again on Wednesday.